insist on getting up and making a contribution, I wish he'd keep it accurate. He made two assertions. One, that the RMA hindered and stopped development of electricity projects. He could not name one example. He was wrong. He then got up and said that ministers were interfering in the electricity market, and he couldn't name one incident. In fact, there were a number of us, many of us, who wished we'd interfered a hell of a lot more, because that's probably what it needed. Mr. Speaker, and he went on about bureaucracy and about, reducing compliance costs, blah, blah, blah. Mr. Speaker, look at what's in this bill. They set up an authority and then a code, and then say that you can be exempt from the code if you can prove that it's going to cost the authority less to implement, which would pretty much mean anyone. And then they say they set up, in Part 3, we're discussing here, they set up a rulings panel. Well, what does the rulings panel do? This is from the government that has made so much noise, made such a song and dance about reducing compliance and regulations. They're going to set up an authority and then a rulings panel. And what does the rulings panel do? Well, it will assist the enforcement of the code by hearing and determining complaints about breaches and possible breaches of the code. Well, come on, let's ask the question why we should have this, right? Firstly, you can be exempt from the code. So the question is, if someone's exempt from the code, are they subject to the rulings panel? Do they have access to the rulings panel to take a complaint? No answer. The government doesn't know this. Then the issue is, will the Commerce Commission or the rulings panel have priority in terms of a ruling over commercial negotiations or failure in commercial negotiations? Will the Securities Commission have a part to play in this? Or will the rulings panel override all of that? Well, Mr Gilmore doesn't know. He can't explain that because the government doesn't know either. Because they're setting up a bureaucracy, a level of compliance and a nightmare that will just further exacerbate the failings of the market structure that they set up in the late 1990s. This is just piling bad practice after bad practice after bad practice. That is that underlying belief that the market will deliver, but we need all of these other institutions and these structures. The authority for a start. Never mind the fact they thought the Commission was unnecessary, but they now need an authority. And then they need a rulings panel. Well, Mr Gilmore, if you do get up and explain what the rulings panel will do, can you be more accurate than your assertion that previous Labor ministers were interfering in the market, or that the RMA was stopping and hindering the development of energy projects? The facts are there were some energy projects that were subject to the Minister of Conservation's approval, and that is the way it should be. I know the National Government has indicated that it wants to take to the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, projects of national significance and just run them through, which puts at risk a whole lot of rivers in this country. And maybe that member should go to the Wild Rivers presentation at Parliament tomorrow night. We're in favour of sustainable hydro generation. But if that government, National Government, as indicated, will rail straight through all the processes, any big projects, then we may see the demise of many, many wild rivers in this country. And that's not what the majority of New Zealanders want. We want good, sustainable hydro generation, geothermal, wind power, renewable sources of energy. But to come back to the bill, Mr Speaker, having set up and got some generation, we now have a belief that many generators, many players in the market will deliver the most efficient and effective electricity for consumers, be they big or small. Mr Speaker, I say this is basically flawed, this piece of legislation. That's why we don't support it, Mr Speaker, and that's why we will continue to object and point out its failings and point out the inaccuracies of the National Party when they get up and speak on this bill.